We come very naturally to our next panel about data centers and how data centers are going to be developing in this region. I see my panelists already on stage, last one joining. Let's start without further ado. Maybe you can also come a bit closer, Deborah, or yeah, okay, leave it as is. Data centers, empowering data centers with renewable electricity. Our panel is focused, let's say, on data centers as a catalyst of new growth, new demand for power, but I think that it's a topic that is not too often related to energy as such, yeah? It's related mostly to data. I'll actually join you here. It's related to you know, people think of data centers when they store their pictures somewhere on the internet or when they access their remote corporate information. But something seems to be changing, Dobromir, and you're a tech entrepreneur. You've been in this area for a long time. You're the chair of an industrial employers organization. Why the topic of data centers has recently become such a hot topic in Southeast Europe? What is happening? What is the reason behind that?
Well, to begin with, hello everyone. To begin with, it's because it's not about data centers. We need to get our terms correctly. Data centers is something of the past. Now it's factories for artificial intelligence, which is completely different thing. I know people use it as a interchangeable term, but actually it's a completely different challenge when it comes to energy necessities, when it comes to building, when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to basically every aspect of the subject. So actually we're having a completely different task ahead of us. The main difference between AI factory and a data center is the energy density. And basically AI factories are literally energy business. I mean, it's literally energy business. You have so much energy that produces so many tokens of intelligence. That's what it produces. Where data centers, yes, they may keep our pictures and whatever in Facebook. So this is a completely different thing. Data centers need to be close to where the usage is. So when you have, say, usage of Amazon services or Google services or whatever services.
Self-driving car in California.
For example, you need to be where that usage is, where AI factories are more of a location agnostic. They can be pretty much anywhere because you send certain task that needs to be calculated and then you return it, just like you do with the production facility. So it's a completely different challenge, and it's a very new challenge, and it's going to be a huge challenge. So the only way to solve it is with a gigantic investment into the power grid, into the balancing power, the base power that we have. And right now, even United States is not doing that. United States will need about 90 gigawatts of power, new power, that within the next 5 years, and that's just for the US. And that's pretty much true in everywhere around the world. And the trick here is that we need it now. We can't wait for it for 10 years. We need it like within the next 1 year or the next 2 years. And whoever can actually supply this will have quite the edge in that new industrial revolution, which is the fifth industrial revolution. And we have come full circle. If you think about it, the digital, the third and the fourth industrial revolutions have made industry very efficient. So actually energy usage fell quite a bit. And now we have come full circle that again, energy is the most important part of this revolution.
But okay, why Eastern Europe or why Southeast Europe? And maybe actually that's a question to Deborah first, because you know, you are representing a company that has been working with a lot of data centers. You've been involved in many projects in globally, but especially in, let's say, in Europe now, taking, for example, UK as one of the big hubs, UK, Ireland. So what is the situation there? Typically, I think that data centers consume, let's say, and that's the thing of the past, you know, not even discussing AI factories yet, but data centers are consuming about, let's say, 1 to 2% of the electricity load in a given country on average. But countries like Ireland, for example, have double-digit rate, even I think coming close to 20%. Is there saturation in Central and Western Europe? And this is the reason for perhaps this increased interest in this region, or what is happening? What is your take?
I think that, yes, there is such a demand on the grid in Western Europe, in Ireland, that they've put a moratorium on building new data centres unless you can provide your own energy source along with it. But there's also perhaps a move away from the big hyperscale sites because of AI and because, you know, we're seeing a greater density of data centres being built, but perhaps less on the hyperscale side. And it's an opportunity. I think you're right in that we need to it's just how the advent of data centers naturally evolves and spreads geographically, that, you know, this is the region that is potentially the next hot topic. It's the next, you know, place that everybody is going to want to be in. Just like, I don't know, a couple of years ago, everyone was looking at Iceland because of geothermal, or indeed the Nordics. You know, the opportunity to tap into natural resources, particularly solar, perhaps wind, is a real opportunity around it in this region.
Okay, that's very interesting, and maybe also a good bridge to Massimo. I mean, you're Italian, you're a grid guy,
Yep.
but you now work with a Greek multinational company across Europe, different geographies.
Yeah.
Among other things, you know, one of the biggest consumers of electricity in Southeast Europe, but also one of the biggest developers of renewable projects, and now data centers as well?
Yes.
Yeah? Why?
This
Why Southeast
is a
Europe?
complex mosaic, let's say. So Metlen, as you know, is an international company that is working more or less in 40 countries all over the world. 7,000 people, 7,600 people all over the world, more or less 5.6 billions of turnover. And now our new name, that is Metlen Energy and Metals, you know that we are very big consumer because we have our smelter. We are one of the biggest, let's say, aluminium producer over the Europe, but we are ready and we are one of the biggest, let's say, investor in renewables all over the countries. Italy, Romania, Bulgaria are one of the most important, let's say, countries apart from Greece that are dealing with these renewables. And now the renewables are like photovoltaics, wind, BESS, of course, and data centers. Now we're starting to, for us, it's starting to become something natural to think about not just to invest in a data center as an opportunity, because it's just an opportunity, but it's a natural consequence if you are thinking about, you know, a regional or a system, electricity system development that has been connected with the renewables, with BESS, and with a lot of the other systems that has to be connected together from the grids. But you have to thinking about, and it was just mentioned in the last panel, how many data, how many megabytes you need to produce in order to operate, in order to maintain, in order to control, to predict, to forecast the behavior of all your infrastructure that you have connected to the grid. We made a very nice calculation with my team that, for example, if you are introducing a gigawatt of renewables, like 700 megawatt of photovoltaics plus 300 megawatt of wind. And like here in Bulgaria, you are installing even 3 gigawatt hours of BESS. You need more or less per year a capacity of calculation of ECT, from ECT point of view, of like 1 megawatt. So you need a if you want to have, just to manage these renewables, but you want to have, you know, a reliable, as we said before in the other panel, a reliable and predictable grid in order to answer to the fluctuation of the renewables. So you need at least 10 megawatts of calculation capacity that has to be installed for each gigawatt of additional renewables. And this is an amazing part.
So that's kind of a two-way street, yeah? The more renewables you build, the more data management facilities.
This is why we are calling internally that is energy transition, but is even a digital revolution, because every additional megawatts that you are going to install in your grid, a calculation capacity has to be even a consequence. You can imagine how many sensors are inside the BESS in order to control the BMS, the control system, the cooling system, all the sensors that are inside the cells and inside the module. So this is a fantastic and amazing consideration that there is no possibility not to connect renewables integration and penetration in the grid without even consider the increase of ATC calculation in order to support everything.
And okay, that's really good, very interesting. And now looking a bit at the higher level. So what are the big challenges for scaling up? I mean, there are bottlenecks clearly. In certain countries, we hear Ireland already a moratorium because of, you know, way too high utilization of the grid and of the existing power generation capabilities.
I can bring some examples.
What is happening in Italy? What is happening elsewhere? So is it indeed a competitive advantage of Southeast Europe that there is grid availability and underutilization of data center?
I think that there are. You have to consider for data center development that are many criteria, many characteristics that we have to fulfill. But in any case, an investor has to have reliability, grid connection, reliability of the grid, authorization process, that is something that is quite important. And what you need, of course, is that the authorization process has to be clear and straightforward. In Italy, but in most of the part of the Eastern Europe, hyperscaler with big names that we know, everybody knows, they are facing now a very strict, let's say, opposition, even from the civil population, in Italy, for example, in which they are starting to consider big data centers. In Italy now, they are afraid regarding data centers that are above 100 megawatts. So, and some big players, they started to renounce, to withdraw from the authorization process due to the fact that they are discussing to change their strategy, not to go with the upper scale, and as my colleague said, to say with a more delocalized and small data centers that even with a small size that can be connected not to the high voltage grid, but to the medium voltage grid. Here in Southeast Europe, maybe is not the case. Maybe here we can have the possibility even to build some bigger data center in terms of ATC capacity and connection, because here the grid is, in some points, there are very strong nodes with the reliability of connection and so on and so forth. But even I don't think that it is not possible to even to consider small data center to be developed also here. And as we have in our mind to have green data center by design, not just fed by green energy, green PPAs or whatever, but even with a great efficiency, energy efficiency, water efficiency, and use of green energy as much as possible.
Very interesting topic.
Sorry
We're going to come back to it.
long
I
discussion.
think it's super interesting. Now, coming back to you, Dobroslav, sorry. I guess it happens sometime. Two things, smaller scale data centers versus hyperscalers, and then the temporal part. Now versus somewhere in the future when we eventually might scale up. Because, what we've been seeing in the region, very bold announcements, Greece announcing, PPC, we're going to have 300 megawatt data center in Western Macedonia in 2 years, and then expand it to a gigawatt, massive thing. We see the Bulgarian minister yesterday, he was again very optimistic. We are negotiating with several data center investors. They want to go big, gigawatts are again under discussion. So in order to get there, should we go via the small scale first, or maybe it happens, you know, in parallel? And what is the benefit of thinking about such a big scale, hyperscale, in a region like Southeast Europe? What would be the advantage here? Let's say something that you don't have elsewhere.
I guess when you start from there, the difference is the ambition. I mean, what do we want to be? Do we want to be world leaders, or do we want to be just wannabes and following up what's happening in China, what's happening in the United States? Soon in India, they're also looking into stuff like that. That's first. Second, again, there is a difference. It's like they're two different topics, AI factory and data centers. They're two different topics. Data centers can be small here and there, and you can have, because you're housing data of say, whether it's in the cloud or whether it's for a particular service provider, like in Sofia, we have a couple of those. I mean, my company has our racks are hosted in one of them. We have like 10 of them or whatever with servers. This is our solutions that are being hosted in a data center. AI factory to be used as such, it needs to be in one place. If it's not in one place, there is only so much of a sized model you can train. Like if it's a small model, yes, you can train it on a smaller farm of GPUs. But if you want to do something really frontier style, something really big, it has to be in a big center. It cannot be done anywhere else. So we need to divide the topics. Now, moving a little bit further into the future, and by further into the future, I mean like 5 years, because anybody that tells you what's going to happen 5 years, more than 5 years from now, is just playing with science fiction. Nobody knows what's going to happen in 5 years. I mean, like, literally nobody knows, because of the exponential that is happening right now in that technology, and we cannot even guess where we're going to be.
Singularity is near. Yeah.
Yes, nearer, if we have to quote Kurt Kurzweil. His last book is Singularity is Nearer. Anyways, what is going to happen is that every physical plant, say like the aluminum factory that the colleague here is having, is going to have an AI factory next to it. That's going to be doing the computations for whatever they're going to be producing there, optimizing processes, working with whatever. It's going to be producing intelligence for that factory. However, in the current state, what we need is, and that's what the hyperscalers are doing, and that's why they're doing it in one place, it's because they need massive amount of GPUs in one place so they can train the next generation of models. This is critical strategic infrastructure, and whoever has the critical infrastructure is going to have a leg up in that competition. So this is really a big deal how we view this, and to separate the topics. Western Europe, Netherlands also is maxed out. I mean, there are literally no places where you can place the one that they're doing right now, the Stargate project. It's 10 square kilometers of a building site. 10 square kilometers that's being built right now. And initial investment, 100 billion. It's being built right now in Texas. This is the scale. This is what we need. And to get there, we need to go somewhere where we already have the availability of the grid, like in Eastern Europe is underused, or at least this part of Europe. I'm not sure about the whole of Eastern Europe, where we have the substations that are already built, so we don't have to wait 5 years, 10 years, for permissions, for whatever. We need now. We need to get in that competition now. Otherwise, we're going to be watching the movie from the sidelines.
So, but do you not think that's part of the opportunity around data centers? There isn't an industry that's not reliant upon crunching that big data. And in this region particularly, there's an opportunity to take all the learnings but make it sustainable operations in a really different way from how it's been done before. So yes, using renewable energy to power the sites, but also fully integrating those things like heat reuse and the byproducts of the sites, but also being, you know, ESG champions in a much broader sense in the communities in which they go into, so that they, you know, yes, I completely understand why places do push back against, you know, the thought of having a big data center built and it being this faceless, you know, unknown, you know, power-hungry site. Actually, there's a real opportunity for them to be community champions and to bring benefits to a region far beyond just what goes on in the server rooms.
Absolutely. I think this is something that somehow also relates to the previous panel, because when we speak about biodiversity measures, or when we speak about, you know, social responsibility measures, it all relates and comes back to, you know, engaging the community. And you're right, if it's going to be a wind plant, big wind project, or big photovoltaic project, or a big, you know, 10 by 10 kilometers faceless building, power hungry one, you need to somehow engage the local community. And for example, these examples with, or these case studies with, you know, water used for cooling to then go and, you know, heat local schools or kindergartens, or maybe even build adjacent greenhouses and use the hot water to, you know, utilize their business model. I think those are brilliant examples. Now, coming back to the power situation, we've been hearing a lot about, you know, nuclear being driven by data center interest. The timeline of nuclear is what, 10, 15 years? I think unrealistically. I mean, I fully agree, 5 years is probably even on the longer side of the horizon we can work with. So I guess renewables are then one of the answers. Battery storage, again, the other one. But indeed, should we focus more on the infrastructure part, or should we focus more on the regulatory part? And, you know, the political stability issue that I guess one would need in order to let's say, park a couple of billions in Bulgaria or Romania or Greece?
Well, they need to go hand in hand, because even if all the stars align and the whole government and all the mayors and everybody agrees we gotta do this, then it actually has to happen physically. So these things need to be moving in parallel and together. And on the subject about having the support of the people, this is a very important one, because besides being a lot of power, the next question is the price of that power. And this is always going to be a touchy subject. Therefore, it needs to have a preemptive campaign explaining to people why this infrastructure is of such a importance, that this is actually going to be critical advantage to the European Union, to the country that's happening, to the region, because, for example, Bulgaria, Romania, Greece, Turkey, 3 of the countries have nuclear power. We can be, as a region, together working, because when we're talking about 1 gigawatt, well, the next question comes is, how about 2? How about 3? I mean, can we do it? Can we actually support that? If one source fails, can we actually turn on another one for 1, 2, 3 gigawatts of power? Because AI factories, they have all the time the same usage pretty much. And just to give you a statistic, last year, just 1 year ago, the people, like NVIDIA people, the ones that are actually building all the chips, they thought we are going to need 100 times less energy than they think now. I mean, we're talking about 2 zeros in 1 year. What's going to happen another year from now? So the only way this to work is actually to have a very good cooperation with the entire region, because it's actually good for the whole continent.
Great. And Massimo, then data centers, I mean, if they have data centers and AI factories, I think now I need to make the distinguishment. So are we going to have them only as load centers, you know, pulling electricity from the grid, or also maybe, you know,
Thank you. Really,
management
thanks.
facility as
really,
well, yeah?
really thanks for this question, because this gives me the possibility, you know, to put my former hat of transmission system operator and let's say some keywords, that cooperation. integration. This is something that is, from the electrical point of view, it's something that is mandatory. Then I think that we can touch a bit even for the urbanistic point of view integration, because you touched something that is very interesting. But data center or EA factories, they could have a very nice capabilities, because they can, in some countries, even in Italy, they can be considered as an infrastructure that could unload the nodal situation during some parts of the hour in which there is an overproduction of facilities or of renewables. So it means that renewables plus BESS that it can give you flexibility, and plus a point of consumption like data center can be considered as a prosumer or aggregator. These names is something that is familiar for most of us, but this integration could lead to provide even services to the grid, not just to download, but why, if you have a tier 4 data center or whatever, you have a backup of BESS or whatever, that you can be used to balance the system and to add additional revenue stream that is completely different from the revenue stream that are from co-locating or leasing or whatever you want, the IT part. It's just inside embedded possibility given by design to your data center or AI factories. So you can be an active infrastructure of the grid, and in this way get and participate. And there is a very nice best practice in Denmark in which data center can participate to the ancillary service market as a potential market user that could provide ancillary service to the grid. And this is a fantastic example in which it's perfectly in line with what you said. And let me spend another word that you give me in your speech before, that data center has to be coordinated in terms of electricity, in terms of energy integration to the system, but also has to be considered as an opportunity for using the heating and all the fluid, cold and hot fluid that can be produced by the cooling system in order to heat houses or any kind of facilities that need some, could be coupled in this way with some factories or any industrial process that could need heat or cold. Depends on what you need.
Thank you very much. And before we close the panel, one final thought from everybody. So, Deborah, if you are to advise, the local development community, how should we properly develop data centers in this region and AI factories to do it properly, to do it according to, lessons learned elsewhere, and maybe even go one step further and, make it better?
I think you're right. I think take advantage of all the lessons that have been learned. Think about green by design, but also, and also interrogate the green credentials of your supply chain, and don't just think about, it's not renewable energy in isolation. There's so much more that can be done to develop it in a way that brings benefits to a region far beyond just what a data center can do.
Thanks. Massimo, what's your take?
I think that takeaway could be collaboration, coordination between all the characteristics and all the players that could be interested. And even sometimes smaller is better than bigger. That could never happen in the future. So small and scalability. I think that is a key word that could drive us in the right direction here in the Southeastern Europe.
Dori, I guess you're going to be bolder. What is your final take on how should we proceed? How should we take on that challenge?
Well, basically, everyone that's in energy, you all need to start thinking in the same sentence that you're also into the intelligence production business. Because the production facilities of the future are facilities that are producing intelligence, which is directly electrons to intelligence. And this is the business model that needs to be looked at, because that's going to be driving the 5th industrial revolution, and every scientific breakthrough you can think of will be based on, do you have access to the most powerful artificial intelligence or do you not? So basically, these two topics need to go hand in hand and needs to be considered not as an afterthought, but actually as an integral process of any project that is being built from now on.
Very, very interesting. And then maybe also to try to summarize and to distill in my final thought, I think that what we have seen over the last 2 days, and bearing in mind that the resource platform has actually been initiated with the strong support of Google, Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, it's always been about how do we help, big consumers get renewable electricity at the lowest possible price. And again, looking at the regional scale, we have a region of, several countries that have massively expanded their solar production over the last 5 years. Wind is lagging behind a little bit, but it's also scaling up. Now, having this, let's say, 15 gigawatts or so new capacity added on the generation side, we're going to see probably about 12 to 15 gigawatt hours of storage capacity in the next 12 to 18 months in the region. And we have grid which is underutilized because, Romania, Bulgaria used to be more industrialized 30 years ago than they are today. It sounds very promising. It sounds very promising, but we also need to take into account the regulatory side, the political risk side. So the governments of each particular country in the region need to work in a way that creates trust, which they have not always been very good at. So that needs to change. And I think we as a renewable energy community, we need to deliver. We need to scale up, we need to be smart, and we need to understand that things should happen in a way which is cost efficient and is at par with some of the biggest corporates, because you cannot make a deal with Google, let's say, if you behave like making a deal with the coffee shop behind the corner. So thank you very much for that.